This is your tech news briefing for Tuesday, April 4th. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. Apple has taken steps to solve one of music's biggest problems, finding the perfect recording of your favorite classical music piece. To do this, the tech giant has come out with a new standalone app for subscribers of its music streaming service called Apple Music Classical. Now, if you listen to a lot of classical music, you may be breathing a sigh of relief. And if you're more of a hip-hop, rock, or pop fan, you may be wondering, how did this become a problem at all? Well, our Science of Success columnist Ben Cohen is with us to explain how the problem arose and how Apple stepped forward to deal with it. Hey Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
So let's start with this problem. Why is it hard to find classical music to stream when I can find, other music super easily?
So there are really two problems. The first is that there is a lot of classical music. To be more specific, there are a lot of recordings of the same repertoire. And the second problem is the way that classical music is categorized. And to be more specific there, it is categorized completely differently than the way that we categorize pop music, which makes it really hard for classical music to be discovered in this streaming era that optimizes for pop music.
Okay, so it doesn't follow the rules of pop. What is it about the algorithm that's optimized for pop that just doesn't quite fit with classical music and how that is labeled?
So the issue is that a pop song, there are really like three labels that matter. It's title, artist, album, right? So if you think about a Taylor Swift song, the three pieces of information that matter are like Antihero by Taylor Swift on the album Midnights, right? And there may be a few covers of that song, but the version of the song that people want to listen to is Taylor Swift. That's the only one that really matters. Now, if you think about any piece of classical music, it is totally different. So you have the name of the track, and you also have the name of the artist who records that track, and the name of the composer who came up with that particular piece of repertoire. But one piece might be separated into multiple movements, right? And there is an opus number and a nickname and a key and a period and an instrument. And there are all sorts of different information that you might want to input when you are searching for classical music in Spotify or Apple Music or any other popular streaming platform. And that completely breaks the algorithm to the point that if you want to find one version of the Sibelius violin concerto, good luck. It's just going to be almost impossible.
So what we're talking about really is metadata. I'm sure many listeners know metadata is the information that describes other data. So what did Apple do to try and address this?
So they really did two things. The first thing they did was they bought a small Dutch company a few years ago called Primephonic. That was a classical-only music streaming platform. There are a few of them that exist. They have some other competitors. And what Primephonic had done was compile this really comprehensive database of metadata where they were manually typing in all of this information that would make it easier to sort through classical music. So Apple bought them because they wanted to solve this problem. And even a company worth $2.5 trillion couldn't really do it by themselves. So they buy Primephonic, they shut the product down in 2021, and last week they launched a standalone product dedicated to classical music called Apple Music Classical. It is this, what we call a bespoke product for the Baroque period and beyond. And, it's sort of unusual because you wouldn't think of the world's most valuable company launching a new product or service that is solely for streaming classical music, right? But I think how they solve this problem applies to many other problems. And as you said, it is this issue of metadata and how it's sort of one of the secrets to organizing the universe.
So what could Apple's experience in tackling metadata as it relates to classical music teach them for, other technologies or other problems that they might come against?
Well, I think they have this problem with the Apple Music product itself, not just Apple Music Classical, but Apple Music. And can they do it for jazz? Can they do it for Indian music? I think there is a real hunger for more information and better information about the information that we consume on a daily basis. And so when you think about whether it's Apple or whether it's Netflix showing us stuff that we really want to see, or ChatGPT giving us answers that we can't find anywhere else on the internet, I think more metadata means better data, means like giving us sharper answers to the questions that we have.
So it sounds like what you're saying is this isn't just a music problem. This is really a search problem, or potentially a solution to a search problem.
I think that's right. And I think for a company like Apple that sold $200 billion of iPhones last year, anything that they can do to make the iPhone slightly more valuable, even on like a very marginal basis like classical music, makes it worth their while. And it's interesting to see them experimenting in this space. And it'll be even more interesting to see how the results of this experiment influence everything else that they do.
Are there any outstanding problems or drawbacks to this new Apple Music Classic?
Yes. So the service is not perfect yet, right? Even though they have cleaned up the listings, a bunch of them are still very messy. Like the metadata is not perfect. There are also some other issues, like it's only available in the US right now. It's not available around the world yet. And also, Apple says it's the largest catalog of classical music ever assembled, but it's still not complete. What Apple says is that the search for perfection in classical music is the longest piece of string imaginable, which is a quote that I love, and that this is just the beginning, and that the product will be much better a year from now than it is this week or it was on the first day.
Have any of their competitors in the music streaming space tried to tackle this issue?
So there are some smaller niche services for classical music only, like Adagio, which also, spotted this problem of metadata and tried to solve it in a similar way. It was founded in 2015, and when I called the founder of Adagio last week, I was sort of expecting him to be shaking in his boots a little bit, now that he's competing against the world's most valuable company. And he did not sound all that intimidated and basically said, I think it's great that a key player in this space is finally paying attention, and there is a role for the David in this story and also the Goliath. The really interesting thing to me will be if Spotify follows Apple here. So Spotify is like easily the giant of the streaming space. And if you look for classical music on Spotify, it is a rough journey. You sort of feel like you've been transported back to the 17th century a little bit if you're trying to find the piece that you're looking for. So it will be really interesting to me to see if Spotify follows the lead of Apple here and cleans up some of its own classical music offerings.
That's our Science of Success columnist, Ben Cohen. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
Thank you.
And that's it for today's Tech News Briefing. For more tech stories, head over to our website, WSJ.com. I'm Zoe Thomas for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.